Hello, so we have finished chapter 9. We are in the book Report to the Principal's Office by Jerry Spinelli. Where we left off, Salem and Eddie has just captured a hamster that the 8th graders were chasing, and they want it back. But Salem and Eddie are not giving it back, and they have found themselves in the principal's office. Mr. Brimlow is very excited because he is ready for lunch. So let's see what happens in chapter 10. Mr. Brimlow was delighted that 2 of his lunch guests had showed up early, especially Salem Brownmiller, who seemed to know what was required better than he, so he simply put her in charge. And soon both he and Eddie Mott were following her orders, dragging in a table from the guidance counselor's office, running to the cafeteria for napkins and utensils and such. It was in the cafeteria that Miss Brownmiller looked up at him and said, It's going to be catered, isn't it? The principal stared at her. Catered? Yes, from here. Somebody will bring our meals to your office on a big tray, or maybe a cart with wheels with silver lids, or meals to keep them warm. She stopped with a look of rising horror as sudden as she studied the blank expression on his face. Mr. Brimlow, we aren't going to brown bag it, are we? Mr. Brimlow gulped. Oh, no, of course not. And so, Mr. Brimlow made arrangements with the cafeteria manager to have 5 hot meals delivered to his office at 11:50 sharp. The hot entree for the day, they discovered, was Sloppy Joe fajitas. Great, chimed Salem on the way back to the office. We'll have a Mexican theme. You should always have a theme for a catered luncheon, don't you think? Mr. Brimlow cleared his throat. He nodded. Oh, yes, quite. As it turned out, there was barely time enough to set the table, much less decorate a la Mexico, for lunchtime was upon them. Eddie Mott could not believe it. The girl standing in the front doorway was Miss Grumpy herself. He had wondered who the other place settings were for, but he couldn't imagine anyone inviting the Grump for lunch. He watched in amazement as Mr. Brimlow went right up to her, all jolly, and shook her hand. Well, hello, Miss Weiler. I see you got my note. Come on in. The Grump looked confused. She took one step and stopped. She looked at Eddie. She looked at the table. She said, Aren't I in the wrong place? I don't think so, said the principal. Where do you think you ought to be? She looked straight up at him. Cedar Grove. Now, it was the principal who was confused. Cedar Grove? Why would you be there? Because of the stuff I did. Mr. Brimlow studied her. He jiggled one wing of his bow tie. He folded his arms. I see. Well, what stuff might that be? The Grump counted them off on her fingers. In math class, I wrote the times table so small that the teacher will probably go blind trying to see them all. In English class, I wrote something ridiculous about my most interesting day last summer. It was all lies. And, she pointed to Eddie, I flicked a boogie ball at that dodo. Everyone froze, as if fearing, waiting for her hand to go to her nose. And, she concluded, I've had a rotten attitude ever since I got on the bus. There was silence and stillness, except for the slow nod of Mr. Brimlow's head. At last, he said, I see. Well, what do you think we should do about you? The Grump answered at once, Expel me. I'm a rotten apple. If I hang around much longer, I'll probably infect the whole school. Eddie glanced over at Salem. She was writing furiously in her notepad, the tip of her tongue peeping from the corner of her mouth. The Grump took another look at the table. The confused expression returned to her face. I'm being expelled, aren't I? Isn't that why I'm here? Mr. Brimlow gave a small, regretful shrug. I'm afraid not, Sonny. The brutal truth is you've been invited to have lunch with us. Sonny? Eddie repeated to himself. Sonny? And then Mr. Brimlow was bringing her over. Sonny Weiler. This dodo also goes by the name of Eddie Mott. Shaking hands with her, trying to avoid her vicious scowl. Sonny Weiler? Salem Brownmiller. Salem's eyes lighting up as if she had just opened a great birthday present. Pumping the girl's hand. Pleased to meet you, Sonny. And then the smell of sloppy joes filled the room. In rolled a double-decker cart pushed by a white-aproned cafeteria lady. Oh, piped Salem. Mr. Brownmiller clapped his hands. All right, time to eat. Let's sit down, gang. Salem, Sonny, and Eddie took their places. Mr. Brimlow started to help the cafeteria lady but she waved him away. Oh, no, Principal, you sit. She was crisp and efficient and dignified. She wore her hair in a bun with a butterfly barrette, and she obviously knew her stuff. Perhaps she had once worked in a major hotel or a multimillionaire's mansion. Mr. Brimlow sat. The cafeteria lady distributed plates. Will there be another? She asked. Nothing, noting the empty place setting. We hope so, said the principal. She laid down a fifth plate. Then came the food. From the upper rack of the cart she took 3 large covered bowls and placed them on the table. With a flourish not unlike any of the matador, she removed the lids to reveal a tossed salad, a steaming vat of sloppy joe, and a tall stack of tortillas. Oh, said Salem. See, said Mr. Brimlow. Sonny said nothing, though her head swiveled slowly toward the other girl. The cafeteria lady then provided each plate with a half pint of milk and 2 plastic-wrapped chocolate chip cookies. She stepped back and considered her work. Her finger went up. Ah, straws! She plugged her hand into the deep pocket of the apron, almost to the elbow. Her hands shot back up with such force and speed that it smacked her in the chin. Her eyes were suddenly big as tortillas. As the principal and 3 students watched in wonder, the apron pocket began to move. To the left, to the right, a rumble, dumple, bulgy ball of movement. And then the dignified cafeteria lady was tearing off her apron and flinging it into the air. The apron landed on the tortilla stack and went swooping about the table, knocking plastic forks and plates until it draped itself over the salad bowl and at last was still. And now a faint rustling could be heard beneath the ghostly apron. Ooh, I wonder what it is. And another thinner sound like chewing. Don't worry, Salem told the others. It's only a hamster. She pulled the apron away. It's a hamster! Exclaimed the principal as the dignified lady fled. Salem reached for it, the principal reached for it, and the hamster took the only escape route available, which happened to be into and out of the sloppy joe bowl. It leaped upon Sonny's shirt and onto the floor, dripping orange and shedding hamburger bits. It dashed in frantic patterns about the office while Brimlow, Brownmiller, and Mott gave chase. The door! Cried the principal, but not soon enough, for the sloppy joe rodent already had a nose on the outer office, and then, miraculously, it was in the air, snatched by a hand that appeared as if it was from nowhere, and then the rest of the body appeared, a boy with green sneakers. Mr. Brimlow hurried to him. Welcome, and great catch there. He pumped the boy's free hand, and turned to the rest of them. Friends, may I present our other guests for lunch today, Mr. Dennis Johnson, who is Pickles. That was exciting lunch. I wonder if they get to eat. Well, we will see in chapter 11. See you there. Bye.